Welcome to Author News Weekly, the weekly news show by authors for authors. We read the news so you don't have to. Join our panel of best-selling authors each week as we take a deep dive into the publishing world, both indie and traditional. Author News Weekly. Yeah, whatever. Welcome back to Author News Weekly. I'm R.A. McGee, your host, and we have a action-packed as a podcast can be, podcast full of news and helpful things to talk to you about this week. But before we get started, let me introduce our stellar panel. I'm going to go backwards this week because I think they're getting a little too comfortable in their ways. So the first person that I want to introduce is Nick Thacker.
Oh, yeah. Number one. Usually last, though.
That's right. Well, don't get too comfortable. Okay. Number two, the middle, the cream of the A&W cookie is Philippa Werner.
Hello.
And the caboose of our show today.
Caboose, huh?
Let's talk about mixed metaphors.
It's Jim Heskett.
I'm Jim Heskett, and I've been called much worse, so that's okay. Carry on.
Jim the Caboose Heskett.
Mm-hmm. Our train is part Oreo cream. There are much bigger problems.
You know, structurally there are issues, but it's very tasty. So, I have another question this week for you guys. It's really been on my mind, and I think that it has to do a little bit with sexism, and that's a hot button topic for me. All right, and my question is this: how come Sippy is always a Mrs.? Like, where is Mr. Sippy? You know what I mean? How come Mr. Sippy's not pulling his weight?
Is it like a gendered noun like they have in Spanish?
I don't even know what we're talking about. I don't even know what Sippy is.
It took me a while to get there.
Thank you. I think Philippa got me.
Yeah, Mississippi. Mrs. Sippy. Not Mr. Sippy.
I thought we were talking about
Sippy.
cups.
Wow.
No. All right, I'm
so
sorry.
You're going like, should I know who Sippy is?
You know why in church we sing hymns and not hers? Because we say amen and not a woman.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And
My
that's
little
your
PK
news for
heart
the
is
week.
slowly dying.
As you can tell, we are all parents, and so there is going to be some awkward things, mostly said by me. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's get started on the news for the week.
Oh, that's me, isn't it? I was looking at articles instead of playing that. Here we go.
That jingle never gets old, I tell you. I like it very much. Okay, so the first story that I would like to pick your collective brains about is coming to us from the Good E-Reader blog. We'll have a link in the show notes. And this is, it's a rather ambitious plan by Barnes & Noble. The article is talking about how Barnes & Noble may reinvent itself and how it could save bookstores. So that's pretty ambitious that they're going to do some things that are going to change bookstores. And the first sentence in the article I think is pretty apropos. It's that Barnes & Noble has been outrunning the Grim Reaper's shadow for quite some time. So I think that we are all readers in addition to authors. Can Barnes & Noble do anything to save itself from the chopping block? And if so, what would you guys like to see from Barnes & Noble? Let's start with Jim, because he's looking the most interested.
I was just curious who you were going to pick. I was just waiting with rapt anticipation. The article says that they're trying to improve Barnes & Noble by making them more local and giving purchasing power. I think they say purchasing power to the local constabularies and the governors. The governors will have direct control. It's a Star Wars joke. Okay, so I think this is a good idea in general, because there's plenty of Barnes & Nobles in small towns and red states that don't want to see whatever the Obama's latest book is on a big display. And there's certain blue states where they don't want to see Don Jr.'s book on a big display up at the front. And that's just smart, You're not going to sell a lot of copies of Don Jr.'s book in Boulder, Colorado, and you're probably not going to sell a whole lot of copies of Becoming in I don't know, whatever tiny town in South Texas. So it's just smart to tailor it toward the local audiences. That's about all I have to say. Maybe will it say Barnes and Noble? Probably not, but it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's and well, what's the saying? That which does not kill me only postpones the inevitable. But but yeah, this reminds me, I mean, in a much less serious context, of the United States completely reinventing its military after Vietnam and just putting a whole bunch of the decision-making power on the individual unit. Like, because they can respond faster. They know exactly what they're dealing with. They know what's happening in their immediate area. And that was immensely useful. I don't know if it translates into book sales as well as it did into military tactics, but seems like it's at least a good idea. They've been outrunning the Grim Reaper thus far.
I think one thing to note here is that Barnes & Noble has some problems that go all the way up the chain as well. So even if they can figure out their retail situation, there's some issues with ownership. I mean, without getting too far into the weeds, like they've changed owners and CEO and president a bunch of times, and it's one of those things where it keeps getting shuffled around as like, I think, a way to kind of maybe inject some new life into it. So that's a piece of it. It may just be done for, it doesn't matter what they do kind of thing. There's only a certain amount of stuff the board can put up with before it's like, you know what, just liquidate. But I'm actually optimistic. I'm hoping that they can come back and kind of be relevant again. And I think their idea of localizing is really good. It's actually, I posted this, I think, in our Slack group. Like, I had some ideas, and these are actually old ideas that I had thought of a long time ago. I think the last time I was in a Barnes & Noble, I was like, okay, how would I fix this if somebody put me in charge tomorrow? And I really think the biggest thing is just making it someplace you actually want to hang out and read. They got rid of all their chairs a long time ago. And I think that was the beginning of the end for me, where I was like, I don't want to go and just pick up a book. If I'm just going to go grab something, I'll just go on Amazon and 2 hours later have it shipped to my house. So I want to go and be able to relax with, coffee or something, and maybe have free coffee, like just have a little coffee stand. Like, okay, so here's what's funny. I went to a Goodwill once, and there was a whole section that had couches and a bunch of books, like they're used books, and then free coffee. And I just like sat there and read some books and bought a few of them. I just thought that was funny because I didn't think a Goodwill would be where I would want to do that. But anyway, I like Barnes & Noble. I liked Barnes & Noble. I like them less now. I think they can do some things that will drastically improve their product. And I don't know. I'm hoping they can come back because I think the world needs a bookstore chain that's still around,
Yes. Bookstores are always awesome. Always awesome. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the whole Blockbuster Netflix thing. In the beginning, I think Blockbuster probably could have torpedoed Netflix, but they were so far behind the curve that they just kept trying to do things to catch up, and it was just so late by then.
Let's not forget that Netflix tried to sell itself to Blockbuster.
Right, exactly. And they laughed them out of the meeting, and
right.
This is what you get. And then 4 years after we get Netflix, Blockbuster's putting up blue boxes to compete with Redbox. Like, what are you guys doing? All right. Well, in any event, I hope it works out. If not, I'm sure we can all find plenty of cool local bookstores that don't suck like Barnes & Noble does sometimes. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yes, there we go. All right, so the next story that we have, it got posted in the Slack group, I think courtesy of Nick, and I think I have the link here to take a look at. And it's essentially the change in policy to ACX's distribution rules. And this is actually really interesting, and I'm very interested about this. And it seems like the gist of it is that if your title has been on sale for more than 90 days, you can convert your distribution type from exclusive to non-exclusive, right? And it says, in addition, all ACX right holders have the option to terminate after 90 days of distribution. And so that is quite a change from their original rules, which were if you were exclusive, you had to be exclusive. If you were exclusive doing a royalty share, it was for 7 years. If you were exclusive, but you had paid for your own production, I believe it was for a year. And so now 90 days is a little more in line with the way that KU works. And so I'm wondering what you guys think about that. What would have prompted their generosity in this manner?
I'll jump in because I just dropped a link in. This is on their blog. It was from January 20th. And so starting February 1st is when they are allowing this. And it is good. It's not as good as I thought it was. In reading it more closely, I reached out to ACX and asked them to immediately take all my books out of exclusivity. And their response came pretty quickly, less than a day later. And the lady there was like, hey, you actually have royalty share deals, not pay for production titles. So you can't move them from exclusive to non-exclusive. Excuse me. So what it actually says, and I'll just read the sentence here. It says, rights holders of DIY, like so you bring your own audio files, or pay for production, where you've paid ACX, through ACX, you paid a narrator, that have been on sale for more than 90 days can convert distribution from exclusive to non-exclusive. However, so I couldn't do that. I couldn't just immediately trigger all my titles to go non-exclusive. But it also says rights holders with royalty share or royalty share plus deals, which are what mine are, must provide producer consent when making their request. We have the option to terminate as long as they've been on sale for 90 days at least. And so I sent a note out to Mike, my narrator for a lot of books, and said, hey, I don't want to terminate our arrangement, but I want to change it to non-exclusive. So we have to terminate through ACX, and then we can choose to sell it however we want. Now, doing that involves some trust. The narrator's got to trust that I'm actually going to pay him, of course. But that barring that, like, there's no reason he should say no to that, because both of us have wanted to go wide, if you will, non-exclusive with our books for a long time. So yeah, this is a huge deal. I mean, I'm frankly surprised that Audible/Amazon is backpedaling so much after the debacle of all the return craziness that we've talked about here.
Is that what you think this is a response to? The return
I was just going to say maybe not. Maybe this is something that's a little longer baked, but it does feel, coming on the heels of this return stuff, that they're like, okay, also we're really sorry, we do love you. I mean, last year they took promo codes away, changed how all that ran. Then they did this return bullshit. Did we just earn our explicit content merit badge? I think we did. And then, my bad. And then this comes less than a month later from a lot of that. And so I can't help but think they're trying to, I've talked too much, but I think what they're doing is they're realizing that they're not the only game in town anymore. And so they're like, hey, we have to stay relevant. We have to stay attractive to authors and narrators. Even though they're a huge entity of Amazon, I think they're just looking to be competitive still.
I have some thoughts on this. I have some thoughts I'll save for our story number 3 about ACX paying authors. But Amazon is just doing a lot of weird stuff with audiobooks lately. I don't think that for whatever reason they're allowing people to go from exclusive to non-exclusive, I don't think it's generosity. As you said, there's probably some kind of sinister underlying reason for this. But I have been through the process of changing an audiobook that's royalty share, because I had years ago I put out like a short story collection with 3 stories, and I took it down from Amazon, but I had an audiobook because I didn't know what I was doing. So I'd hired this guy did royalty share with this guy to do like a 45-minute audiobook. It was just a bad idea for several reasons. But then later I wanted to take down the short story collection, add a bunch of new stories to it, and put it back up, because it would be a lot longer, I thought. That was my thinking. I still didn't know what I was doing when I did this. But I contacted ACX, and they said, it's royalty share, so we need permission. We need something written from the producer, from the narrator, that says that they're okay with this. And so I contacted the narrator, and we worked it out. Basically, he was like, I said, I'll pay you a fee, we can agree, and then we could break the contract. And he just said, sure. And then so we had to both write into ACX and say that that's what we wanted to do. And then they dissolved it without a whole lot of fuss. It just took a bunch of back and forth emails, and it took like a month worth of back and forth emails to get it all settled up, but they didn't raise any fuss, and they took down the old book and let us put up a new book.
I've done that a few times with a different. So I changed the title of the Golden Crystal to the Atlantis Stone, and I've changed one of my relics series called Relics from 3 books to 1 omnibus kind of thing. And in doing so, I've changed narrators, and they've always, as long as I've had the producer write in as well, they've always come down on our side with it. Most recently, I just asked the producer if I could get out of the arrangement completely. And we were not making any money with the book, so it's not like he was out a bunch of money. But all he asked was just, hey, if you produce this again, just give me the right of first refusal. And we don't have a contract. It's just an email back and forth. And I told him, sure, if I do anything with this, you were a great narrator, you probably will be in the future. So we sent an email in, and within a day, ACX was like, sure, we'll take it down. No problem. And I think that was maybe 4 years into the 7-year arrangement. So yeah, I'm with you, Jim. I don't think Amazon ever does anything out of generosity. I think there's some very clear intention here that they're going to do something, although I'm really curious as to what it's going to be and why they would take this tack with authors.
I don't necessarily think it's sinister. I think it's more of a, what on earth is coming down the pipeline, or were they seeing in their data that we don't know about that was like unstoppable force, and they're just trying not to get completely bulldozed by this.
Maybe it's something sinister, and that's why Jeff Bezos got out now.
It could be.
Before the end came.
Audiobooks are just killing all of Amazon from the inside, and he's running away.
They've achieved sentience, and they're coming after the programmers.
That's the clear answer to me.
Right on. Well, before we try to figure out what Amazon's motives would be, let's stay motives in the future would be, let's stay in the present a little bit and realize that, they're kind of hosing us authors to begin with our audiobooks. Now, this next story, it comes to us from Ally, which is the Alliance of Independent Authors. It's a very, very in-depth write-up about how audiobook authors and narrators are paid by Audible and ACX. By someone named Colleen Cross, who I don't know, but I should have shot her an email because this article is very in-depth. And what it essentially boils down to is that despite the fact that we are told that we can get, 50% royalty rate if we're exclusive, or 25% if we're wide with our audiobooks, the actual net royalty, or the effective royalty, as Colleen Cross calls it, is much, much lower. And it looks like that if you have a royalty share and you are exclusive, your effective royalty is 10%. Now, that would be 10% for you, 10% for the narrator. If you're not exclusive and you don't have a royalty share, it's looking like 13%. So these numbers are kind of a kick in the crotch a little bit. And I will say that after looking at my ACX statement every month and wondering why the number of books that I'm selling doesn't seem to translate with the royalty I'm receiving, this makes a lot of sense. Did you guys get a chance to check this out? And how depressing is it?
It's super depressing.
Very depressing. Sobering is also another word you could use.
Yeah.
You see how many books you need to sell to break even, and it's twice as many as you thought you needed to sell to break even. That is a very sobering thought.
Or not so much sobering as driving you to drink.
Sure.
Well,
unsobering.
Yeah, I'm going to back out of that one because it does not take much to drive me to drink. So, I think this is incredible work by Colleen. I have come to the same conclusion. I've got a spreadsheet that last year about this time I started tracking and digging because I was selling thousands of ebooks or audiobooks a month and just making pennies on them. And I was like, what's going on? So she's done a great job breaking this down. Now she's only, as far as I can tell, she's only using the Audible listener royalty category, AL, in your ACX report. You'll notice there's two others though. I think it's like ALC and then something like that, and them have different payouts, and it's real convoluted, and I'm sure that's on purpose. But I've done the math on all of them, and yeah, this is exactly what I found too. Where it's just, they say on their website, hey, you're going to get 50%. Oh, but then you have to split 25% with your narrator. Oh, but then that 50% is only after we've taken our fees out, and they don't actually tell you how much that translates to. But like this one, if you've got, like, mine are all about 10 to 20 hour ebooks, or I keep saying that, audiobooks. So the retail price is $24.95. And if I was non-exclusive, I would actually make $3 on that book, on that sale. So clearly there's some money being funneled into some pockets before they get to mine. And that's, I think, just egregiously wrong and absolutely typical. So I don't know what to make of it, but.
Well, there's a difference between the AL, the Audible Listener, ALC, ALOP, and I can't remember what the third one's called.
But ALOP, yeah.
One is Audible Listener purchased with a credit. That's the one you get stiffed the most on. And then
so, the other ones are like if somebody buys the
ALOP is Audible Listener original purchase or other purchase, like someone who already spent their credit. So an Audible listener who bought your audiobook. And then the third one is someone who's not an Audible, doesn't have a subscription, and they bought it. You make the most money on that one, I think.
I think so. But they're all they're far lower than what you would imagine, somebody's spending $25 on their platform, and you think you get 50% of that split either between you and the narrator or just, you, and you don't. So, yeah. I think
Amazon doesn't really care about audiobooks. I think they just don't want to cede that ground to Apple, the other really big audiobook seller. They don't want people to start buying audiobooks on Apple. They don't want Apple to create a whisper sync kind of thing like they have with Amazon that syncs up your ebook and your audiobook, because they don't want people to start buying books on Apple. I think it's all just about market share. And so Amazon is just trying to run Audible as cheaply as possible.
But then in that case, Amazon is known for creating loss leaders in market to gain market share, and so why not turn Audible into not a cash cow that's going to bleed authors, but the opposite? Why not make it an attractive deal? I don't need to make a ton of money on these audiobooks, but I'd like to feel like I'm making something. So why not actually give us 50% or more, because they don't need all that, percentage, and attract all these authors and get us exclusive because they have the biggest platform already. They're connected to our ebooks already. They're, like you said, whisper sync with Kindle. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons I want to use Amazon to sell my audiobooks.
I think the answer is that it's taken us this long to notice on a wide scale. We didn't know about the returns. We didn't know about the royalties. Like you said, you had noticed this. But for a lot of people, this is going to be one of the first times that they're hearing about it.
Right.
And so the answer is simply that they could get away with it.
Yeah.
For this long. And if now they're scrambling. Now they're trying to get authors to stay in, but they didn't have to before.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like I'm commenting on Jim's statement of, like, right now that they're realizing now that they realize somehow that they've just now realized that Apple is still a thing. And they've just now realized that authors have other options like Findaway Voices, which I love, and just all these different options of selling direct, even with their audiobooks. Why not just say, hey, you know what? We want all you authors to stay with us, so we're going to increase the royalty payout to 80%. You can split that however you want, and then we're going to actually give you more money for this stuff. And if we have to, clean house and fire a few people, sorry, but I think authors are the people creating the content should be the most important people in a business that sells their content.
Traditional.
They won't be. And they never are with Amazon, but that's kind of my bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have a much more cynical view of them trying to continue throwing people scraps and not making changes and being like, okay, will it blow over?
Right.
Let's just say.
It probably will, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the problem is all of my audiobooks are non-exclusive. I paid my narrator to put them all together. And it's tough to get traction on some of the other platforms. And so it would be nice if some of the other platforms came up with some viable ways to get back a little more of that market share, because, Apple is not very appealing for me every month. So in any event, all right. So now that we all have headaches from how Amazon's trying to mess us around with our audiobooks, I wanted to bring your guys' attention to an older article from Joanna Penn, and it was a podcast that she had, How to Be a Healthy Writer in 2021 with Dr. Ewan Lawson. And I think for anyone who spends a significant amount of time at the desk, hunched over, typing, looking at the blue screen all day, we all have some things that we deal with, both physically and mentally, to try to make us remain at our best while we endeavor to finish these books. So I was wondering if you guys have any tips or anything special that you do, or anything that you can pass along as you try to preserve your bodies for the marathon that is our writing careers. So let's see, who looks like they have something good to add. Damn, Pippa looks like she's got something awesome to add right now.
Well, I think one of the specific things with writing that it doesn't look like is touched on in here is the overarching belief in creative enterprise that your creativity and good art comes from misery. And I think that really just needs to be staked through the heart as soon as possible. Because we keep seeing it come up. We see it in music. We see it with actors. We see it with authors. And so simply giving yourself the permission to keep, chanting to yourself or tape on the edge of your monitor or whatever, my best work comes from my health, is a surprisingly out there sentiment, given what tends to be a low grade background noise belief of, the harder I work, the more exhausted I am. That makes me a better writer. The more I sacrifice to be a writer, that's the measure of who I am. And it's not. You need to keep being a whole person, and that's where your best writing comes from.
So you mean sacrificing your physical and mental sanity at the altar of the creative gods is not the way to go?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. No. All right. No, I'm going to write that down.
But isn't that just the stereotypical American work ethic that you're not really achieving unless you're almost dead every day?
I think there's a little bit of that, but then there's also, I remember people saying straight out in, oh Lord, what Metallica album was it? Like, oh, it's great that he went to therapy and he's happy now, but his music just isn't as good anymore. Like
Saint Anger, maybe. After Saint Anger.
Gotta be Garage, right?
And it just the idea of, we keep telling actors and singers and all of this, and you're like, oh, but you make such good art when you're completely tortured as a person. Not always true. We also lose a lot of good artists because they burn out, or
Yeah. Sleep is my answer. Sleep. I mean, and so here's the deal. For people who already think they know how important sleep is, it's more important. That's kind of what I say. It's like I'm so huge a fan of just getting good sleep for longer periods of time than we think is necessary. And yeah, I think it goes into what Jim's talking about with just the common work ethic right now, at least in America, is this idea that, if you're not red-eyed and bleary and just busting your ass day and night, like you're not getting enough done. And I hate that. I think it's bullshit. And so sleep, I think a big part of what creatives, especially authors, we tend to be isolated, whether or not we are extroverted or introverted, we're kind of isolated in what we do. I've realized that I think most humans, especially men, it seems that men that I've talked to, deal with some form of anxiety, either mild or major in some ways, or, but it's chronic. It's this feeling of dread or something like that. And I think that's sometimes sleep is all we need to kind of fix some of that. But just being really in tune with what anxiety actually is and how it manifests is really, really crucial for my career and my health. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't want to we could do a whole podcast episode about anxiety, I think, but not enough time for that. But those are the two that I'll say is be aware that anxiety is a thing and it could be affecting you, and get more sleep. Even if
Don't Jay Thorne and Rachel Herron have a podcast specifically about this topic, about health and wellness for writers? I think they have one.
If they do, yeah, let's get a link to that. I haven't heard of it. I know I've been on Adam Croft's podcast, and we've talked about anxiety and stuff in the past, and that was a good one as well.
The Writer's Well.
With it. The Writer's Well? Okay.
Yeah, that's Jay and Rachel's podcast.
Cool.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, I think it's, and obviously we don't want to take too much time on this, but also just to tag on to what Nick said, if you're thinking, oh, anxiety, depression, any of those things, those don't really relate to me, look up the ways in which those can manifest. For instance, depression can often manifest as anger. And so that's not the mental image people have of it. So just look up some of those things and see if they resonate. And go from there.
Yes, right on. Well, all right. Well, now that we've just talked about that amazingly depressing subject of the audiobooks killing us and the writing killing us physically and mentally, we could come to the point of every episode where I want one of you guys to please tell me something good so I can feel better before we end this podcast. So who's got something good to tell me? All right.
I found a super cool editor.
Really?
Yes. A really awesome editor who is super invested in epic fantasy, which is the thing I'm writing right now, and is very excited about, is doing a whole package deal with a developmental edit and then a copy edit and all of that. And I'm so excited to work with them.
Man, that's second only to a VA who knows how to run ads.
Oh man, the dream.
There's the unicorn, right?
Fantasy, aren't we?
Yeah, could write it. Nick's right. Could write a whole fantasy book about that.
The magical VA.
No, that's great stuff. I know I have a very good relationship with my editor, and just feels good to have someone who's kind of pulling for you and helping to steer you the right direction sometimes. So I know how good that feels. So congratulations on that. That is tough to find. Well, all right. Well, does anybody have anything they want to say to kind of wrap up any of our stories for today?
Sure. Here's some writer self-care. Just because you can write 6,000 words a day doesn't mean you should. Doesn't mean you always should. Sometimes it's okay to have a light day and let your brain heal a little bit before pounding out 4 or 5 chapters a day. You don't always have to do that.
Well, there's always more energy drinks to drink, Jim.
Right.
There's always more Bang and Red Bull and Rain.
We decided to go sharply the other direction from our earlier advice.
If you haven't picked up on anything we've said, if you can't write 100,000 words a day, you are weak.
Yes, your career might not last. Well, okay. Well, for all of us at A&W, thanks for tuning in. And I'm R.M. McGee saying this meeting is over. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.